What's up guys? So today we're reviewing the 2021 M1 iMac from Apple that we unboxed in the previous video on this channel. So if you haven't watched that, go check it out. But for now, we're doing our review where we go over some of the design features, the specs, whether or not I think you should buy this Mac, and then how this holds up under my workflow. So if you're a photographer or videographer, this video will be helpful because we might have similar workflows, and I've tested this machine against 6K raw footage in DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut Pro. And I've also edited tons of photos in Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop. And then I've done some graphic design in InDesign and Adobe Illustrator. So I feel like I've ticked off enough of the boxes for a creator, someone who creates content or photos or videos, to be able to decide if this iMac will also work for you. All right, without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, first up, I want to talk about the design of this beautiful iMac right here. And I know it's been a fairly controversial category. Some people, not me, but some people hate the extended chin and the white bezels around the side. But straight out of the box, I was super impressed with this iMac. It's been the most significant design upgrade for an iMac since, I think, 2007, when the first aluminum iMac came out. And while this one is full aluminum, it also has some of that retro feel of the original iMacs with all the different colors. So there is a little nostalgia factor there. And we know companies love hitting the nostalgia factor to get you to buy more stuff. I'm looking at you, Disney. Watch me get copyright strike just for saying the word Disney. All right, anyway, now some of these things we'll also go into the specs about, but for now we're just talking about the design features of this iMac. So first off, the 24-inch display is fantastic, color accurate like all the past iMacs, great for editing photos and videos. Now it's important to note that this iMac seems to be designed to sit in a family environment, maybe at a home office or in your family room, somewhere where everyone can use it, and it feels more like a family computer, although the specs definitely support pro work. One of the most obvious tells to that, well, aside from the wide range of color options, is the white bezels around the side. Now, a lot of people are kind of pushing back because they say black bezels are better for editing photo and video, but the white bezels actually help if your computer's in a room where there's a white wall behind it, because after like a day of using this, the white bezels just fade into the wall, and it really just feels like your display is floating there, and the white bezels don't become distracting at all at that point. Now, the coatings on this screen, I'm actually very impressed with. It does a really good job blocking reflections and glares, which again, I think is good for a home environment, because maybe you don't have like blackout curtains, it's in a family room, maybe natural light is pouring in. So the coatings on this machine are incredible for editing photo and video. It feels a little bit like a matte finish. I know it's still glossy, it's a single sheet of glass covering the entire screen, but it does have a little bit more of a matte finish than a traditional, MacBook Pro would or a MacBook Air. Now, another controversial feature is this, big chin down here at the bottom. Now, I'm not opposed to this considering how thin they made these iMacs. The majority of your processors and M1 chips and fans, everything, speakers, is housed in this little chin right here, and it's still super thin. So I'm so surprised that they were able to fit that much machinery in this little chin right there. And I also think that the chin is an iconic Apple feature. If they get rid of that, how are you gonna tell us apart from just like a standard monitor? Especially since there's no logo on the front anymore. I think that the chin is a signature Apple design, just like how the notch is kind of signature to the iPhones now. I do like how the back is straight. It's not like that concave shape anymore, because I do think that it gives a more sleek, modern design to an iMac than that, curved outer shell. I think if we were to give points in each category, I think that this Mac would definitely exceed in the design category. They were very intentional in how they designed this machine. It's user-friendly, it's color coordinated, everything from the MagSafe braided cable in the back, it's color coordinated to the color that you choose for your iMac, to the keyboard, which also has the same gold yellow finish as my iMac, and then the Magic Mouse, which has the exact same gold yellow finish. And then also the lightning cable that comes with it has the same color. So overall, I can see that Apple was very intentional with their design. I mean, even looking at the box itself, you see that they put a lot of attention into the design, which is something that we can always say Apple is conscious of. But I think that this is the best designed as a whole product that Apple has produced so far. Now we do definitely have to talk about the port situation. On the back of the base model, you're left with 2 USB-C ports. That's it on the back. On the upgraded model, which is the one that I got, you get 4, which is a little bit better, not great. I've never run out of ports because you're using dongles and adapters, which normally turns one port into like 3 or 4 USB ports. So with adapters, not a problem, but I could definitely see how you would run into problems on the base model of the iMac. And then because this iMac is so thin, they actually had to move the headphone jack to the side of the iMac. So the headphone jack is right here on your left side. And then this bottom bar here is just one big speaker. Now Apple really hyped up the speakers on these M1 iMacs, and I gotta say, I am impressed, but I'm also coming from a laptop, so I understand that that is a biased review. Laptop speakers aren't great. iMac, not too much better. It definitely gets louder than my laptop, but I can't say that the audio quality is significantly better. If I'm editing videos, I'm still tossing on a pair of headphones, and I'm not really trusting the speakers on this, but they are a marked improvement from the previous iMac model. Now with the base model iMac, you're actually gonna get a keyboard without the Touch ID bar. I do think that it is a good upgrade to get. It's not necessary, but it is definitely a welcome upgrade. On the higher end model, you get this automatically, which is good. So that's another like 50 bucks that you're saving. So anytime you kind of just have to upgrade one thing here and there, just do the math, because you may already reach that threshold to get the higher end model. So what I will say is the Touch ID bar, great for purchasing stuff or getting into your device. And another great feature, because this is kind of like family orientated, if there's a bunch of different user profiles on your machine, so like all your kids have a profile, the parents have a profile, all you gotta do is put your finger on the Touch ID bar and it'll get you into your own profile. So that's another little thing to note if this is kind of a family computer that you're sticking in the center of a living room. The Magic Mouse is good. It's nothing special. It glides well. Again, I said on my previous video, I wish that the charging port was up front here so you could use it while it charged like you can with the keyboard, because the charging port's down here on the bottom. But the battery life is great on both of these, actually, is super good. So I don't think that that's a huge deal. I definitely understand though if you switch out your mouse, because you might wanna be able to program some of the other keys on a mouse. So those are all the notable design features of this laptop. If I were to give it a rating out of 10, I'd probably give it like an 8 out of 10 for the design category. But to be fair to Apple, considering that this is supposed to be a consumer, like family computer, I think that if you are using this as a family computer, it would deserve like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 for the design. I'm a little bit biased because I would like an SD card reader on the machine, or just a few more ports, because I am doing professional work. But again, my biased answer would be an 8 out of 10. My unbiased would probably be a 10 out of 10 on the design. It's really well designed and thought out all across the board. So that's it with the design. Let's talk specs. So if you haven't heard me say it a few times already, this iMac is sporting an M1 chip from Apple. Now this is their new chip, which reportedly performs like 4 times faster for stuff like video editing and render intensive tasks. The only thing that really suffers from an M1 chip is just the GPU on non-optimized programs. So running anything that's graphics intensive on a non-optimized program is going to be slower than having a dedicated GPU. But this machine, in terms of CPU and rendering, is so impressive for everything that I've used it for. And this M1 chip is honestly providing so much value for the price. Now, I upgraded my machine to the 16 gigabytes of RAM option. Base model comes with 8 gigabytes, but you can upgrade that. And I will say, if you're gonna upgrade anything, upgrade your RAM from 8 to 16 gigabytes, because it's the only thing in this machine that you can't upgrade after the fact. Now, storage on this machine ranges anywhere from 256 up to 2 terabytes of SSD storage. Now, if you don't know what SSD storage is, it's a solid state drive. It's the fastest type of storage you could get. It just means that there's no spinning, moving components, which again increases the speed. So on this machine, you can configure that all the way up to 2 terabytes. I went with 500 because I offload a lot of my data onto external hard drives for editing. So I really don't need anything above 512. Now I mentioned this before, but it's a 24-inch 4.5K Retina display. And the display is also 500 nits of brightness, and the color accuracy is fantastic. It's the best you're gonna get on any display, even remotely close to this price point. Now the camera is nothing to write home about. It's a 1080p FaceTime HD camera with M1 image signal processor. One thing I noticed, and I don't know if the specs are available for the camera in this regard, but it feels like a very wide field of view. I don't know the exact focal length that that camera is producing, but it feels way wider than my laptop camera. So like when I'm hopping on a Zoom class in my apartment, I feel like I have to clean way more of my apartment because like you can see the whole thing. So I don't know if that's something you care about, but it feels like a much wider field of view, which again makes me think that this is more like a family desktop. You stick it in your family room, you call grandma, she can see the whole family, the whole living room in the shot. So that's just another little quick thing to note. Now I'm pretty sure this is the case with all the iMacs so far, but this iMac only supports one external display. So if you're someone that needs two external monitors with your desktop, then this iMac is not gonna be for you. A few final important things to note in the spec category is the base model iMac only has one fan, and for some reason unknown to me, they took out the fan with the heat sink, which if you don't know technology, the heat sink is the part that actually pulls out the heat. So the only fan that's still in the base model is the one that just pushes in cold air, which tends to be the louder fan than the one with the heat sink. And for the base model, the one fan is actually on the opposite side of the M1 chip, which doesn't make sense to me because if you're only gonna have one fan, keep the one that's directly next to the M1 chip with the heatsink. I would consider this a major design flaw, but because the M1 chip is so good at processing tasks, I think I'm gonna give it a pass on that. I think that's all you need to know about the specs of this machine. Again, take a look at the spec list while you're buying this and see if there's anything that you need to upgrade. To reiterate, upgrade the RAM. If you're gonna upgrade anything, do that first, and then if you upgrade anything past the RAM, look at the higher end model. Oh, and one more thing to note about the higher end model. On the higher end model, the power brick that it comes with actually has an Ethernet port, which is super great if you want a more stable internet connection. But the Wi-Fi is very good on this machine. But if you do want that added security of Ethernet, or you do have like a very fast Ethernet system, then only the higher end model comes with the Ethernet built into the power brick. So that's one last thing to note if you want to get the higher end model over the base model. So next I want to talk about how this is held up under my workflow. And again, I do photography and videography. I edit 4K video from my Sony cameras, and then for my Blackmagic, I'll edit 6K RAW. For photography, I'm using 24 megapixels RAW files, and then I'm editing them in Lightroom, and I'll also do some photo manipulation in Photoshop. Now, photo editing is the easier of the two tasks, so I'm gonna knock that out first. For photo editing, this thing has been so great. Again, like I said, the display is fantastic. Having a larger display that's color accurate and this big compared to a laptop just allows you to have so much more control over your images. I feel like with a display this large, you can full screen it and look at it as if it were a print. So it really helps when you're editing the photos. And it's a huge step up if you're just editing on your iPhone. It's also a big step up if you're editing on a laptop. So having a bigger display is something that I've noticed an improvement in my photos from. And export times on this M1 chip with the 16 gigabytes of RAMs is super fast for exporting photos. Now for video work, I'm mainly editing 4K. I've done projects with 6K RAW from the Blackmagic 6K Pro to really be able to test it out. So on my previous video, the intro was all shot in 6K RAW, and that edited so nice. Now this M1 chip is super game changing for my workflow because I'd actually bought my Blackmagic before I upgraded my desktop computer. So I was trying to edit 6K RAW on my 2020 MacBook Pro. At most, I was able to put a 10-second 6K RAW clip onto my MacBook Pro 2020 before my computer crashed. And again, this is a 2020 laptop, and this is just 2021. So the difference for 1 year made when they came out with the M1 chip is so incredible. I edited multi-layer 6K RAW footage in DaVinci Resolve on this laptop without it ever stuttering. I could play back that in real time, which is so great. I didn't have to create proxies or downsample the images. I could edit the 6K RAW natively in DaVinci Resolve with no playback issues, with multiple layers of color grading and effects and audio tracks, and I never ran into any problems. And then the export times was incredibly fast, which is crazy. Now the M1 chip is supposed to be 4 times faster for video editing for the optimized programs, which is Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve. These are all optimized for M1 chips. And the list of applications that are optimized for M1 Apple silicone grows by the day. So as more programs optimize for the M1 chip, it just becomes so much faster. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the only downside to M1 chips is GPU performance. So if you know you're someone who's going to need a lot of graphics and CPU power from your machine, then I don't think that this iMac is for you just yet. All right, now who do I think that this iMac is for? And if it is for you, do I think that it's worth it to buy? Now, if you know you're gonna be doing tasks similar to what I described, so within the content creation space, so photography, videography, graphic design, things of that nature, and you know you're not really gonna need too much graphic power, then this iMac is gonna be the biggest bang for your buck that you're ever gonna get in those specific tasks. And that's solely because of the M1 chip. It's optimized for what it needs to be, which is faster video editing, faster rendering, performance. And it doesn't just do well in those fields, it excels in those fields. So while like 16 gigabytes of RAM doesn't sound like a lot for video editing, when 16 gigabytes of RAM is 4 times faster than previous models, it's blowing the maxed out old iMacs, which would cost like $9,000 or $10,000 to max them out. It's blowing those out of the water. So 16 gigabytes of RAM for those like specific tasks that it's good for actually feels like what's 16 times 4? Let me do some quick math in my head. Yep, just doing this in my head. 16 times 4. So 16 gigabytes of RAM for those specific tasks actually feels like 64, which is crazy. Now, if you're looking for like a family computer, then the base model iMac is gonna be so much bang for your buck. It's gonna look great in your home. You'll get to, you know, pick your color scheme to match the feng shui of your house. Now, if you're doing pro work like me, I don't think you should even consider the base model. I think you should immediately decide to upgrade to the little bit higher end model with the 4 USB-C ports and the 2 fans and the 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I think base model for a family computer or someone who isn't doing photo and video editing. And then if you are doing professional work, photo, video editing, either max out the higher end model or get the higher end model with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And I think that's all you're really gonna need for the time being. If you have any questions about this machine, I love helping people make their purchasing decisions. So leave a comment and I'll get back to you answering your question to maybe kind of guide you a little bit before you purchase it. Anyway, I really hope that this video helped you out. If it did, feel free to hit the subscribe button. It helps me out. So I help you, you help me. I help you, you help me. All right. And if you liked the video, you can hit the like button. If you disliked it, well, you can't do anything because YouTube took away the dislike button against my better wishes. So you can really only like it. So you only have one option. Ignoring is not an option. All right, thank you guys for watching the video. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.